All right. Well, this morning, it's not going to be a typical talk or message. I myself, as a Christian who strives to be an active and moving part of the body of Christ, I've been having a conversation with myself recently, and I kind of want to share that with you. So I hope this talk is beneficial for you in some way or another. Maybe it has something that you can identify with. At best, I will probably move through this quickly, so we'll be at lunch soon. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Maria Frantz. I'm married to Thomas, who found himself a seat at the very back. I live in Grantsville, 2 dogs, 1 cat, a fish since I wrote this. I work in quality improvement and care coordination as a nurse. So some people who know me well use words to describe me such as assertive, confident, genuine, intelligent sometimes, extroverted, and my husband, who knows me the best, most frequently would describe me as intense, which is probably accurate. When I'm determined that I'm going to do something, I usually don't do it halfway. I tend to buckle in and just really get at it. And that leads to me being all go all the time, which was, I'm sure, loads of fun for my parents to deal with as I was growing up. What you might not know about me as a person is that I just really want you to be happy about me. Like, a lot. It's kind of an issue in my life. I want everybody to be happy about me all the time. I have very, very minimal tolerance for people not being happy about me. If I've decided that you're a person that I respect, like, forget it. I will bend over backwards to try to make sure that I am meeting your expectations for me or exceeding those things. So, where does that get me into problems? Well, sometimes it leads me to 2 extremes. So I have that intense side of me, and then I also have that I want you to like me side of me. And it can put me and other people like me into those 2 extremes. So sometimes I struggle to speak truth when it is socially favorable to just let the moment pass. And other times I recognize that I do this and I overcorrect. And it can lead me to being intense, assertive, and it can at moments cause me to give others less grace than I myself have been given. I believe that past generations often did that overcorrection thing. And at times that meant that they were unkind, and we can call that out. We've all seen it, right? Like, we know when people in the body of Christ are overcorrecting and they're not being kind towards others around them. So that's an obvious problem, right? Well, there's that other side. There's that second issue. And the temptation that I see myself in, and that I see kind of growing and brewing within the greater American church, is that temptation to neglect biblical truths and convictions. I believe that this happens right now because we're in a you're either for me or against me type of world. There's this thought today that disagreeing with the choice that someone makes or something about them means that you hate the very essence of that person. If that's not true for you, and I hope it's not, then I want to tell you today that you do not have to let that be spoken over you. Don't submit to that if it's not true. I strongly suspect that Jesus wouldn't have. Throughout his life, Jesus constantly expressed compassion for mankind while still urging people to remodel their lives in the pursuit of God. One of the most obvious examples of this was when a woman was caught in adultery. The woman was brought in front of Jesus and the scribes and the Pharisees. In that time, the Pharisees felt that they had Christianity figured out. In the terms of today's discussion, they were the overcorrectors, but they just called it correct. They viewed that their position was fully justified by the law. So we're looking at John 8, 4-11. They said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses, in the law, commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say?" This they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. Now, I have no proof for this, but it's very interesting to me that they used this situation to bring before Jesus. It seems to me that they knew enough about Jesus to know that he had compassion for mankind, and they thought, we got him. We're going to back him into a corner, and he's going to have to completely reject the law. Jesus instead showed compassion, and standards are not mutually exclusive. Let's continue to see how Jesus handled this situation. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as he did not hear. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to them, "He who's without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest, even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Then Jesus spoke to them, saying, "I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life." This balance between respecting biblical convictions while showing love and compassion for people outside of our life and our convictions can be a very difficult thing to find, and it won't happen without a decision to be intentional about our actions. But this balance is not impossible to find. And I believe that when we declare ourselves ambassadors for Christ, it is our responsibility to find it. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about someone in my life who got this right. And that person is my grandma, Lenora Moss. She passed away about 2 years ago now. We're headed on that. And she was like just purely good. So, I have some pictures to show you of her. She radiated love, and you can see it on her face. So there's a picture of my grandpa and my grandma. I can't see what you're seeing, but then there's also a picture of my mom and my aunts, along with my grandma. She had this balance down. With her grandchildren, her love was obvious. She invested hard. Whether that be, making birthday cakes that you knew took her a month to make, like the different components, or the elaborate Easter egg hunts. I think at one point there was an Easter egg basket that was hung on a belt out of the attic window. Like, they did it. But there was an investment in her grandchildren. There was investment in us personally. Another example of this, as far as a personal level, at one point, my grandpa has their entire house wired for a sound system, right? So whether you're in the basement or all the way at the third level, you're listening to the same music. And at one point, they decided that they were going to really get in touch with who their grandchildren were. So they had us all pick a song that we're currently listening to. This was a couple years ago, so there was stuff like Rebecca St. James from my sister. I think I picked 1,000 Foot Crutch because I thought it was really cool. But we also had Under Oath through our entire grandparents' sound system. And if you're familiar at all with Under Oath, you know that is a commitment from grandchildren. that took some love. And it just really ingrained in me. My grandparents, they don't just care about, grandchildren in general. They care about me. They care about my cousins, specifically what's going on in their life. And they're willing to, frankly, be kind of uncomfortable to express that. So that was really cool as far as their family is. But I think the biggest thing about my grandparents, the biggest thing about my grandma, was that this commitment to compassion and caring did not end at the confines of their family. It extended for everybody. So, I'm way ahead of my papers. Let's catch up. Anyways. She was a collector of people in need of Christ, and there was really nobody who wasn't welcome at her table. Over the years, she had girls from the teen home. She had teens who were actively high. She had really convicts that went to jail for like the most heinous crimes, gets you beat up in jail type of crimes. Amish people, all of those people were welcome at her table, and they were treated with the same level of hospitality. They were treated with the same china, with the same massive centerpiece displays, because she knew that they all needed Christ's love. And that's what she did. She just displayed that in such real terms that you knew when you walked in my grandma's house that she cared about you and cared about your experience there. She recognized that being the light of the world sometimes just meant investing in people, giving them a hot meal, and helping them to laugh at a low point in their lives. And she did all of this without compromising or telling people that making poor choices or decisions are justified, or without glorifying those choices. At times, she would offer a simple, well, I think that they could do better. Her steadfast commitment to Christ-based values and her extravagant hospitality, to borrow a term from Adam's last sermon, meant that when people were ready, they knew where my grandparents stood. And they were there. They were already at my grandparents' house having a meal or sharing a cup of coffee, and they were ready to have those conversations. As Christians, we are all moving forward and constantly trying to improve ourselves. I'm happy to have the example of my grandmother to help me move in the right direction. Her example both calms my temptation to overcorrect and also reassures me when it's time to speak light into darkness. To move this from a passive idea into something that happens in my daily life, I need to ask myself some questions. Am I allowing the culture of the day, this disagreements equals hate thing, to limit my ability to show true Christ-led compassion and love to those around me? Is my faith steadfast and on display for people that I interact with? Here's the question that's most scary for me. Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice for me. Am I willing to sacrifice even a little bit of social comfort for him? Am I willing to open up my home and my life to those who live differently than I do? If not, why? To close out, I have two things that I want to make abundantly clear. As you interact with the world this coming week, and honestly in these coming years, take heart. Having convictions does not make you hateful. My grandmother proved this and personified convictions expressed in love in a truly radical way. But know that this statement is a two-sided coin. Don't scoop it up and try to use it to justify a lack of compassion for your fellow man. Having convictions does not make you hateful. As Christians, if we find contempt in our heart for people who are living in darkness, we have a problem that we need to fix. I offer no excuses for myself, and I offer no excuses for you. We do not get to throw any stones that Christ himself did not throw. I know that I fail at times, but as I've contemplated all of this, it's come down to a few simple expectations that I'm making for myself. I will carry my convictions with commitment and express them in love, and I will strive to live life with extravagant hospitality. I hope you do the same. That's all I got for you.